Your kidneys don't take the night off. While you sleep, they're still filtering your entire blood supply, still managing your blood pressure, still clearing out everything your body doesn't need. And what you eat in the hour before bed can either help that process or quietly work against it. You've probably been told to avoid eating fruit before bed, something about sugar spikes and disrupted sleep. But for your kidneys specifically, the right fruit at the right time might be one of the more useful things you can do for them. And it's not the fruit most people would guess. In this video, I'm going to show you the specific fruit with real sleep and kidney research behind it, and a second one with even stronger research that most people don't know is connected to kidney health at all. I'll explain exactly why nighttime matters for your kidneys in a way most people never hear, give you the portion and timing that actually makes a difference, and then cover something almost no video on this topic mentions clearly enough: a genuinely important caution about fruit and potassium that matters a lot if you or someone you love already has reduced kidney function. That part alone could be the most useful 2 minutes of this video for some of you, so stay through to the end. Before we get into it, tell me in the comments what fruit you currently reach for in the evening, if any. I read these and it genuinely shapes what I dig into next. Here's the framework I want you to hold on to for the rest of this video. Your kidneys are protected day to day by three things working together: steady hydration without overloading your system, stable blood pressure and blood sugar overnight, and enough antioxidant support to handle the oxidative stress that naturally builds up in an organ that's filtering your entire blood supply over and over, all day and night. Everything we talk about tonight fits into one of those three categories: hydration, overnight stability, or antioxidant support. Keep that framework in mind because it's going to make the why behind each recommendation click into place. And it's also going to explain why two very different fruits both belong in this conversation. Let's start with something most people never think about. Your kidneys actually work differently at night than they do during the day. In a healthy person, blood pressure naturally dips somewhat during sleep. It's called nocturnal dipping, and it gives your cardiovascular system, including your kidneys, a period of lower workload each night. Research in kidney health has consistently found that people whose blood pressure doesn't dip properly at night, what's called a non-dipping pattern, tend to show faster progression of kidney function decline over time compared to people with a normal dip. Your kidneys, in other words, are quietly doing some of their most important recovery work while you sleep. Anything that supports a calm, stable overnight period is genuinely working with your body's natural rhythm rather than against it. That's the real reason timing matters here. It's not just about what you eat, it's about giving your kidneys the conditions they need during the exact hours they're doing this quiet overnight work. There's a second piece to this that connects directly to blood sugar. Overnight blood sugar swings, even mild ones, force your kidneys to manage additional fluid and filtration load at exactly the time they're supposed to be under the least amount of stress. This is part of why the timing and type of food you eat before bed matters more than most people assume, and it's going to come back later when we talk about portion and pairing. So, which fruit actually fits into that window well? The first one I want to walk you through is kiwi. Kiwi doesn't get talked about nearly as much as blueberries or apples in most health content, but it has something the others don't: a real published sleep study behind it. Researchers at Taipei Medical University had adults with sleep complaints eat kiwi fruit about an hour before bed for 4 weeks and found meaningful improvements in how quickly people fell asleep, how long they stayed asleep, and how rested they felt overall. That matters here specifically because sleep quality and overnight blood pressure stability are connected. Better sleep is associated with a healthier nocturnal dipping pattern, which loops right back to that first point about your kidneys getting real recovery time overnight. On top of that sleep connection, kiwi is genuinely rich in vitamin C, more ounce for ounce than an orange, along with other antioxidant compounds that help offset the oxidative stress your kidneys deal with as they filter your blood continuously. I want to be straightforward with you about something though. The Kiwi sleep study is real and it's published, but it's also a single, relatively small trial. That doesn't make the finding meaningless. It means it's promising rather than definitive. And it's part of why I want to show you a second fruit that has a deeper research base behind the exact same overnight benefit. The second fruit is tart cherry. And if you've never thought about tart cherry and kidney health in the same sentence, you're not alone. Most people only know tart cherry as a sleep aid, if they know it at all. Tart cherries, specifically sour or Montmorency varieties, not sweet cherries, contain natural compounds, including melatonin precursors, tryptophan, and anti-inflammatory phytochemicals. Unlike the kiwi research, the sleep evidence behind tart cherry is built on multiple studies, including a systematic review pulling together findings across several trials, not just one. That's a meaningfully larger evidence base, and it's part of why I wanted to bring it into this video rather than leave you with only one option. Here's the piece that connects it back to kidney health specifically, not just sleep in general. Better sleep supports healthier nocturnal blood pressure dipping, the same mechanism we talked about earlier, which means less sustained overnight pressure on the blood vessels your kidneys depend on for filtering. The sleep benefit and the kidney benefit aren't two separate things here. They're the same mechanism, approached from two different angles. Tart cherries are also naturally low in potassium relative to many other antioxidant-rich fruits, which matters a lot once we get to the safety section later in this video. Sweet cherries are a different story, so the variety you choose genuinely matters. If you want to stack the sleep benefit with either fruit, pair it with a small handful of pumpkin seeds, about a tablespoon. Pumpkin seeds are one of the more concentrated food sources of magnesium, and magnesium plays a supporting role in the same relaxation and sleep onset pathways that make both the kiwi and tart cherry timing effective in the first place. Now, let's talk about the hydration piece of the framework, because this is where a lot of well-meaning advice actually backfires for older adults specifically. You'll often hear that a very water-rich fruit, like watermelon, is a great bedtime choice because of hydration. For most people during the day, that's true. But right before bed, for an older adult, a large amount of fluid at once often means one thing: a trip or two to the bathroom in the middle of the night. That's not just an inconvenience. Getting up groggy in the dark is one of the more common, under-discussed contributors to nighttime falls in seniors. Both kiwi and tart cherries are a genuinely useful middle ground here. They have meaningful water content and fiber, but not the large fluid load of something like watermelon or cantaloupe, which makes either one a more sensible choice specifically for the hour or two before bed. Let's go a little deeper on the antioxidant piece, because this is the part that connects most directly back to kidney health specifically, not just sleep. Your kidneys are one of the most richly blood-supplied organs in your body. They receive a disproportionately large share of your total blood flow, relative to their size, because their entire job is filtering that blood continuously. That workload naturally generates oxidative stress, byproducts of all that filtering activity that, over years, are thought to contribute to gradual decline in kidney function, especially when combined with other risk factors like high blood pressure or blood sugar. Vitamin C and other plant antioxidants don't reverse existing kidney damage, and I want to be very clear about that. But there's a reasonable, evidence supported case that consistent antioxidant intake, as part of an overall healthy diet, supports the kind of cellular environment that's less prone to that cumulative oxidative wear over time. Both of tonight's fruits contribute to that same underlying goal, just through slightly different compounds. Vitamin C driven antioxidant activity from kiwi, and anthocyanin and phytochemical driven activity from tart cherry. There's a specific reason this matters more as you get older, too. Kidney function naturally declines somewhat with age, even without any diagnosed disease. It's a gradual process, and it's part of why the normal range your doctor uses for creatinine and EGFR shifts slightly as you age. That doesn't mean decline is inevitable or that there's nothing you can do about it. It means the margin for error gets a little smaller over time, which is exactly why the small, consistent habits we're talking about tonight matter more in your 60s and 70s than they might have in your 40s. You're not trying to reverse anything here. You're trying to support an organ that's already working a little harder than it used to, so it can keep working well for longer. If you know someone dealing with early kidney concerns, or a parent whose last lab report mentioned their kidney numbers, send them this video. This is exactly the kind of practical, doable change that's easier to actually stick with when someone sends it to you directly instead of you stumbling onto it alone. Let's talk practical portion and timing, because vague advice doesn't help anyone. For kiwi, 1 to 2 kiwis, eaten about an hour before you go to bed, matching the timing used in the actual sleep research. You can eat the skin. It's edible, it adds fiber, and some people find the texture takes getting used to. Or peel it if you prefer. You're not losing the core benefit either way. For tart cherries, 1/2 to 1 cup of sour or Montmorency cherries, or 4 to 8 ounces of unsweetened tart cherry juice, in that same window before bed. If you go the juice route, unsweetened is non-negotiable. Sweetened tart cherry juice adds exactly the kind of sugar load that works against the overnight blood sugar stability we talked about earlier. You don't need both fruits every night. Some people prefer kiwi's texture, some prefer tart cherry, and some like to rotate between the two through the week. Either one fits the same framework. The choice genuinely comes down to preference. One more practical note: give it a real trial before judging it. The Kiwi sleep study ran for 4 weeks of nightly use, not a one-off night. I'd suggest matching that, 3 to 4 weeks of consistent use, before deciding whether it's making a real difference for you. A shorter trial just isn't giving it the same fair shot the actual research did. I think about people I hear from in a situation like this a lot. Let's call her Helen, mid-60s, who'd read somewhere that potassium-rich fruit was good for her heart and started eating a banana every night before bed as a habit. A few months later, her routine blood work came back with her potassium level flagged in red, and her doctor's office actually called her at home to ask what she'd been eating that week. It turned out Helen has moderately reduced kidney function, something she knew about but hadn't connected to her nightly banana habit. Once she talked with her doctor and switched to a lower potassium option, like kiwi instead, in a portion her doctor felt was appropriate for her, her numbers came back into a safer range at her next check. Same general idea, fruit before bed, completely different outcome, because her kidneys specifically needed a different plan than the general advice most people hear. And that brings me to the single most important thing in this entire video. So I want to say this as directly as I can. Everything I've described tonight is aimed at people with generally healthy kidney function, looking to support that health going forward. If you already have diagnosed kidney disease, especially anything beyond the earliest stage, or if you're on dialysis, potassium becomes a genuinely different conversation. Kidneys that aren't filtering at full capacity can't clear potassium from your blood as efficiently, and high potassium levels, something called hyperkalemia, can affect your heart's rhythm in ways that are serious, not cosmetic. Kiwi actually has more potassium than an orange, though still less than a banana, so it's a moderate source, not a low one, and that distinction matters here. Tart cherries, by comparison, are naturally lower in potassium than kiwi, which is worth knowing if you're managing your intake closely. But lower doesn't mean potassium free, and portion still matters. There's a second group this applies to as well, and it's a bigger group than you might think. If you're on blood pressure medications that affect potassium, ACE inhibitors, ARBs, or potassium sparing diuretics like spironolactone, you can be at elevated hyperkalemia risk even without a formal kidney disease diagnosis. If that's you, this caution applies just as much as it does to anyone with diagnosed kidney disease. So here's the actual instruction, not a vague caveat. If you have any diagnosed kidney condition or you're on any of those blood pressure medications, please talk with your doctor or a renal dietitian before adding kiwi, tart cherry, or any potassium containing fruit to your evening routine, so they can tell you what fits your specific lab numbers and medication list. This isn't a just to be safe throwaway line. For this particular topic, it's the difference between a genuinely helpful video and one that could cause real harm for a meaningful slice of this audience. I'd rather you hear that clearly from me than not hear it at all. I also want to address something that comes up often in comments on videos like this one. My last kidney test was normal, so I should be fine, right? Usually, yes, but normal on a single test still deserves a little context. Kidney function can shift gradually over months or years without symptoms you'd notice day to day, which is part of why doctors recommend periodic rechecks rather than a one-time test you never revisit, especially once you're past 60, or if you're managing blood pressure, diabetes, or heart disease. None of that means you should be anxious about a piece of fruit. It just means normal last time and worth rechecking periodically aren't in conflict. They're both reasonable at once. Let me run through a few questions I know some of you are already thinking, because I'd rather answer them directly than leave you guessing. Can I eat both kiwi and tart cherry in the same night? You can, but there's no evidence that combining them doubles the benefit. The research behind each was done on that fruit alone. If you want variety, rotating them through the week is a perfectly reasonable approach. What if I don't know my current kidney numbers? That's genuinely common, and it's worth fixing before you build a habit like this one. A basic metabolic panel, something your doctor can order easily, includes creatinine, EGFR, and your potassium level. Those three numbers give you and your doctor a real starting point instead of guessing. Does this apply to diabetics? The blood sugar stability piece of tonight's framework is actually especially relevant if you're diabetic, but portion and pairing matter more for you specifically. This is exactly the kind of detail worth bringing directly to your doctor or a dietitian, since insulin use and medication timing change the picture. Is tart cherry juice the same as tart cherry supplements? Not necessarily. Supplements vary widely in concentration and aren't standardized the way food is, so I'd stick with whole fruit or unsweetened juice unless your doctor has specifically recommended a supplement form. I already take a magnesium supplement. Should I skip the pumpkin seeds? Not necessarily, but it's worth mentioning to your doctor, especially if you're on any medication that also affects magnesium levels, like certain diuretics. More isn't automatically better here, and this is a simple thing to double check rather than guess about. Will this actually show up on a lab test, or is it too small a change to matter? Honestly, a single fruit added to your evening routine is unlikely to move a lab number dramatically on its own, and I don't want to oversell that. What it can realistically influence, based on the research we've walked through, is sleep quality and the overnight blood pressure pattern connected to it. And those are meaningful, even when they don't show up as a dramatic shift on paper. So here's what I'd actually do with everything we covered tonight. 1. If you have generally healthy kidney function, try 1 to 2 kiwis or half to 1 cup of tart cherries about an hour before bed, consistently for 3 to 4 weeks before judging the effect, matching the actual research timelines. 2. Skip the very high water fruits like watermelon right before bed if nighttime bathroom trips are already a problem for you. Save those for earlier in the day. 3. If you want to stack the benefit, add a small handful of pumpkin seeds alongside either fruit. 4. If you have any diagnosed kidney condition or you're taking blood pressure medications like ACE inhibitors, ARBs, or potassium sparing diuretics, do not start this without checking with your doctor or renal dietitian first. Bring this video's topic up directly at your next appointment. 5. If you haven't had a basic metabolic panel recently and you're over 60, that's worth requesting at your next visit so you actually know your numbers before building a new habit around them. 6. Track how you're sleeping over those 3 to 4 weeks, since that's genuinely the fastest signal you'll get that something is working. At the end of the day, this is a small, low effort change. One piece of fruit at the right time for the right reasons. But small, consistent choices like this are exactly what add up over years to protect an organ that quietly does an enormous amount of work for you without ever asking for credit. Taking care of it now is part of what keeps you independent, steady, and feeling like yourself later. Everything in this video is general health education, not personal medical advice. If you're managing an existing condition or taking medication, please talk with your own doctor before making any changes. This content is meant to work alongside your care, not replace it. If this was useful, subscribe and hit the bell so you catch what's next. I'm planning a video on the biggest myths about kidney-friendly diets, since there's a lot of outdated advice still floating around that deserves a second look. I'll see you there.